Right now, while you're watching this video, millions of people around the world are sleeping without homes. Some lost their families, some lost their countries, some lost everything they spent years building in a single night. And the scary part? Most of them never thought it would happen to them. This isn't a movie. This is real life in 2026. But this story isn't only about war. It's about what happens when life takes everything from someone and they still refuse to quit. Because sometimes pain doesn't destroy people, sometimes it creates power. Her name was Lena, 28 years old, a teacher, a daughter, a woman who thought her future was already planned out. She lived in a small apartment filled with books, plants, and sticky notes from her students. Nothing fancy, but it was hers. Every morning she walked to school carrying coffee in one hand and lesson papers in the other while little kids screamed her name from classroom windows. Miss Lena? Back then life felt normal, safe, predictable. She had plans to get married that summer, a small wedding, simple life, peaceful future. Then one night the sky exploded. At first she thought it was thunder, then the windows shattered. Sirens screamed outside, people started running through the streets, and suddenly the world she knew disappeared in minutes. A neighbor pounded on her door yelling, "Get out now!" Lena grabbed the first thing she saw, a backpack. A phone with a cracked screen, a sweater, that's it. 20 minutes later, the apartment building she lived in for 6 years was gone, destroyed, just smoke and fire. And the craziest part? The next morning, the sun still came up like nothing happened, like the world didn't care. And honestly, that's when she realized something brutal. Life keeps moving even when yours falls apart. Days later, she crossed borders packed into overcrowded buses with strangers who looked just as terrified as she was. Children crying, people holding broken suitcases. Old men staring silently out windows like they had already accepted defeat. Nobody knew where they were going anymore, they just knew they couldn't stay. Eventually, she arrived in Germany. Cold weather, cold faces, cold reality. The refugee camp smelled like wet clothes, exhaustion, and hopelessness. Rows of tents, long food lines, people surviving, not living, and every night she scrolled through old photos on her cracked phone, her classroom, her students. Her home, gone, just gone. One night she sat outside the tent staring at the rain and whispered to herself, "What's the point anymore?" Because nobody talks about this part, the part after survival. The empty feeling after the adrenaline disappears. When you realize you're still alive but your old life isn't. Weeks passed, then months. She stopped talking to people, stopped caring, stopped imagining a future. Even hearing children laugh started hurting her because it reminded her of who she used to be. And one afternoon, something small happened that changed everything. A volunteer walked through the camp handing out notebooks. Most people ignored him, but when he reached Lena, he smiled and said, "Write down what you know." That was it. One sentence, simple, but something about it stayed in her mind all night. Write down what you know. The next morning, she opened the notebook. At first, nothing came out. Then slowly, she started writing lesson plans, math exercises, children's stories, memories from her classroom back home. And for the first time in months, she felt useful again. Not healed, not happy, but useful. A few days later, she noticed refugee children running around the camp with nothing to do, no schools, no structure, just chaos. So she gathered a few kids near a broken table outside the tents and started teaching them basic lessons. No real classroom, no supplies, no whiteboard, just a notebook and determination. At first, only 3 kids came. Then 10, then 20. Parents started hearing about the teacher in the camp. Children who hadn't smiled in months suddenly had something to look forward to again. And slowly, Lena started changing too. Because pain hits different when your suffering finally helps somebody else survive theirs. One evening, a local NGO worker visited the camp and saw Lena teaching. The children were laughing, learning, feeling human again. And the worker just stood there shocked. Because in the middle of destruction, this woman was rebuilding hope from absolutely nothing. The NGO offered her a small online platform to teach displaced children remotely. Nothing huge. Just a chance, and honestly, she almost said no. Fear does that to people. It convinces you you're still broken even after you've already started healing. But eventually, she accepted. At first, her English wasn't perfect. She stumbled over words, mispronounced sentences. People online corrected her accent, some even mocked her, but she kept showing up. Again, and again, and again, because once you survive war, embarrassment doesn't scare you anymore. Months passed. Her videos started spreading online. People connected with her story, not because she pretended to be strong, but because she was honest about the pain, about waking up some mornings still missing home, still grieving, still angry, and that honesty, it made people listen. Thousands became millions. Suddenly news outlets wanted interviews, organizations wanted partnerships. People who once ignored refugees were now reposting her speeches online saying, "This woman inspired me." Funny how the world works. The same society that once saw refugees as statistics was now listening to one teach them about resilience. Years later, Lena stood backstage at a huge European conference about refugee rights. Bright lights, massive audience, politicians, journalists, powerful people, and for a moment she remembered the refugee tent, the rain, the hopeless nights, the cracked phone, the girl who thought life was over. Then someone announced her name. The crowd applauded as she walked onto the stage, and standing behind that podium, Lena looked across the room and said, "War took my home." The room went silent, but it never took my future. You could feel the emotion hit people instantly, because deep down, everybody is fighting some kind of war, maybe not bombs, maybe not destruction. But fear, failure, depression, loneliness, feeling powerless. That's why her story mattered, because she proved something powerful. You do not need perfect conditions to build a meaningful life. You just need to refuse to let pain become your identity. That speech changed everything. Her education platform expanded across refugee communities worldwide. Children who lost homes now had teachers again, hope again, dreams again. And one night after another long conference, Lena sat alone in her hotel room staring out the window at city lights. Not crying, not broken, just thoughtful, because success never erased the pain. It simply gave the pain a purpose, and maybe that's what strength really is, not pretending trauma never happened, but refusing to let it be the final chapter. The truth is, the war did take her home. It took photographs, furniture, streets she loved, voices she missed. But there was one thing it could never destroy: her mind, her purpose, her refusal to quit. And that's the dangerous thing about human beings. When pain stops scaring them, they become unstoppable. Because at the end of the day, life can take your comfort, your money, your plans, even your home, but the moment you decide to keep going anyway, that's when power begins. And Lena understood something most people never do. Your circumstances do not write your story, your response does. And sometimes the people who lose everything become the strongest people in the world.